It may be intuitive to you why you need the bio section in the MCAT or the psych-soc section even in the MCAT, but maybe not so much why you need the CARS section in the MCAT. So in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about my experience with the CARS section and how I have found it helpful in med school. So the first thing that CARS really helps you with is CARS helps you take a lot of complex, often boring information and condense it down and understand it. And this is really important in med school because you will have a lot of information you need to go through and you need to be able to get through it quickly, but you cannot spend the time just like skimming it. You actually have to be able to get something from it. And I think that's where CARS really helps you, because you may have seen things about speed reading in CARS and then you will practice reading faster and you're like, wow, I didn't understand anything. And that's kind of the point. You have to be able to kind of match being able to read quickly with being able to understand the information, because that's what you're going to need to be able to do in medical school. And along those same lines, what CARS will help you do is CARS helps you figure out how to both see the big picture while finding relevant details. And this is really important when you're reading your syllabus in med school. If you're reading a textbook, if you're reading a patient's chart, you need to be able to understand what are they trying to get at? What is the point of this? Why is this person here? But you also need to be able to find specific details that may be buried in all of that information. Another thing that CARS can help you with is if your school does USMLE Step 1 type tests, you're gonna get more comfortable with how to approach the questions. So they're probably not gonna have passage-based questions on your school exams for medical school, but you are going to have questions where they're like a paragraph in length and you've got to read the whole question and it's like, what are they even asking me about? Or even better is when the whole question is about something else and then the very end of the question asks you about a totally different topic. So you want to be able to practice with CARS, which often has questions that may be a couple of sentences long, being able to figure out what are they asking me, what is the relevant information in this question stem, and how can I apply that to answering the question? And that can really help you. The difference between CARS and your school exam is in CARS, you may be able to go back and find the information in the passage versus your school exam where you need to know it in your head. But the same premise applies to kind of reading the end of the question. What is the question? What are they going to get at? Going back to the question stem and saying, okay, here's all the information they gave me, and then assimilating those two things so that you can pick the correct answer. And along those same lines, CARS really helps you learn how to pick the correct answer. You can actually eliminate quite a few things on CARS questions just by this is partially wrong, this is not completely correct, this is not something that was really talked about. And that same premise also applies on your medical school exams. I had a doctor one time tell me that you're not going to know everything on your medical school exam. That's just a fact. And it's really true. There will be things where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know this, I don't recognize this, I do recognize it, but it was from a while ago, so I just can't recall it. And you have to be able to start eliminating things, which is something CARS helps you practice. For instance, if you get a question on your medical school exam, you can kind of eliminate normally 2 answers at least, just based on like, does this even have anything to do with what the question's asking me? And that's very similar to CARS, where when you're going through CARS questions, you're gonna notice, okay, this part of the passage where this question's referring to doesn't even talk about these answer choices. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of them. And this is another way where practicing with CARS prepares you for good test taking skills when you get on your medical school exams. And the last thing about CARS that I think is the most intuitive thing how CARS can help you in medical school is that CARS prepares you for how much reading you're gonna have to do in medical school. There is so much reading in medical school. You're constantly reading. If you're not looking at your lectures, you're probably reading. Even if you have a completely like Anki-based flashcard study type technique, you're still reading those flashcards. So CARS really helps prepare you for taking a lot of information and again, just kind of being able to get it all in your brain and understand what's going on, because you're not able to just skim something and not kind of connect it. You have to be able to put the pieces together. So while CARS may feel totally different from the rest of the MCAT, and it is, this is something that we at MCAT Mastery have recognized and have put a lot of effort into creating some CARS courses for you to use and to go through so you can learn how to master CARS. And I will say for me personally that out of all the sections, CARS has been the most helpful coming into medical school, because medical school teaches you the relevant science you need. It teaches you any chemistry or physics you really need. It's very helpful to have a stronger background in those, but it's not necessary. It will even teach you relevant psychology and sociology that you may need. It does not teach you how to be able to read, essentially. You have to have that skill already. And so taking the time to master CARS, especially if it's something you're weak at already, will serve you so well in the future as you're looking towards medical school.